Hi there and welcome to Warhammer Painting. This video is about painting space wolves with contrast paint combined with a technique I call skip lighting. I came across that some time ago when I first tried to paint this model here with rust gray and Fenrisian gray as we always did, but over a base coat of contrast paint, because I thought it might speed up my painting process and also make the rust gray look a little more brilliant. And while I was doing that, I realized that actually there were some parts where the lighting effect that the Space Wolf Gray contrast paint produced by itself was so nice that I just didn't want to ruin that. These were this part here on the face and also the highlights beneath the kneecaps. And I liked the outcome so much that I did a short video on the finished model. That was the first video on this channel. And the general reaction was, yeah, nice, but I just don't get whatever you are talking about. So this is the full tutorial video. And in the meantime, I've refined this into a bit more of a technique that can be applied systematically. And just 2 models later, it looks like this. Now, here, like I said, all these parts are highlighted conventionally with thin lines of Fenrisian gray on top of the rust gray afterwards. And here, every single edge on that model is done using the new skip lighting. And of course, you can see how much more defined it looks, how much more precise the highlighting is, and more standing out, by the way. And especially if you compare these parts around here on the backpack, this one here on the right, let me get a little closer. The newer one, which is done with all skip lighting, it looks as if somebody had turned up the screen resolution. Don't you think? Like watching a movie in DVD and then in 4K. So, also, like I just said, between these 2 models, there was just one other. So you can make really rapid progress with this. And if you want to know how to do that, you keep watching this video. Now, 2 things up front. First, this is a rather long video and it covers the whole painting process, at least as far as the gray armor parts are concerned, and with a lot of explanation on top. But if you just want to grasp the general idea of what's going on here, I've prepared a much shorter version for nervous people who look for brevity in everything. And the other thing is, be warned, this was my actual first proper painting video where I filmed my own painting process. So if I make awkward long pauses while painting and talking at the same time, or if I accidentally move the model off camera, or in the most important part, my hands get really shaky because I try to hold the model close to the camera in a pretty uncomfortable position, bear with me. I think the technique that is being explained will be worth it. Otherwise, go for the short version. So, this is skip lighting with contrast paint on space wolves. After starting out with a priming coat of gray cedar, the first thing we're going to do is to apply a base coat made up of 3 contrast paints, which are Black Templar, Space Wolf Gray, and Gore-Grunter Fur. We'll start out with the Black Templar, which will go to the weapons, the breastplate, and all the soft parts of the armor, like here or down there on the butt, and also the grip of the pistol. After that, we'll apply the gore grunter fur, which will be used for the leather pockets and the holster and what's visible of the belt. And when we're finished with these two, we can do minor corrections to the priming coat of the rest of the armor, which will most likely be necessary, and then apply our Space Wolf Grey. Now we can do a few corrections, and then we're ready to go with the Space Wolf Grey. With the Space Wolf Grey, even more so than with the Black Templar, use lots of contrast medium. Really do not be shy at all about this, because we are not using the Space Wolf Grey as a as a surface color. What we care about is the effects it produces in the recessed parts for shading and on the edges for highlights. Whatever is in between does not matter to us. So let's get, I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera. It's the brush is really loaded with medium, maybe even a little more like that. Yeah, I think that should be good. And now just drap it over there like you just don't care. Now, usually when you do contrast paints, you look out for pooling and try to avoid that. And if pooling happens, take it away a bit with your brush. And every description or tutorial will tell you to do it like that. Now, in this case, don't care about it. Yeah, pooling is actually desired for what we are doing. For once, because we want to have really dark linings in the shaded parts. And additionally, if something happens like here, see where there's a certain gradation, a transition from dark to light, this will actually make our job easier in the next step, which is the actual trick to all of this. So really get your brush loaded with the contrast and medium mixture and apply it boldly. So, and these edges here, these bright edges and dark linings next to them, this is exactly what we are going for. So it looks like we're pretty much done here. Like I said, we've got a few parts that turn out a bit ugly, like down here, for example. Don't mind, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that everywhere we get really strong, big shades, and that we don't have any dark blotches on prominent edges. But this all looks pretty well. I think this one down here that could use a bit more shading. Yeah, better like that. And get some in here as well. All right, looking good. So it's time to let this dry, grab a coffee, and then we'll be back for the fun part. So we're back, all the paint is dry, and now we're ready to get to what this video is actually about. Just a hint, if you see something like this over here, there's an edge where we actually got a large blotch of dark paint, but that's not a problem at all, as we will see when we get to that part. Now, what skip lighting is all about is using the shades and highlights that the contrast paint gives us. And of course, the problem is the in-between part. So we're gonna smooth that out to get a real Space Wolf look. And we're gonna do that with ordinary rust gray layer paint. So let's get to it. What we're gonna do now is to apply 2 thin coats of paint that cover all the areas between shades and highlights. And for the first of these layers, we're gonna thin the paint down a bit, not too much, just so that it gets smoothly running, so we won't see any brush strokes afterwards. And what we do now is really easy. We're just gonna roughen out the areas that we want to be rust gray later on. Like this. Don't get close to the edges for now. Just blotch it out a bit. For this, a medium-sized layer brush is fine. And just do it like that. As I said, just do it roughly. You see? Like this. That's all we need for now. We're gonna get a bit closer to the edge here, paint a bit more over that dark part. Now I'm gonna need to thin down the paint just a little bit more. So, a bit overloaded. There we go. And just do it like that. Real rough approximation of the surfaces. And in parts where we are approaching a shade, you can actually paint right up to the shade in the first layer. Sorry, I moved a bit out of camera there. And you see, just like that. And we're going to keep doing this around the leg. Like this. We're going to try to catch a rather huge highlight here. So I'm leaving a real broad edge open there. Yeah, this could be a bit more towards the shape, like this. Great. This is just what we need. Go around to the back. Like that. I got a bit close to that edge there. You won't always get it totally perfect. In cases where you actually hit on an edge, so it can't be skipped afterwards. Don't worry, it's totally fine to do a few conventional highlights with Fenrisian Gray afterwards. But with this approach, all in all, we're going to be able to do much more precise highlights than with painting them on later. Or at least for my skill level. It will get much better this way. Down there. Like this. Yeah, that looks good. Around to the other ankle. Sorry if you cannot really see it that well. But I guess you catch my drift. A bit more here into that corner and over the shadow, like that. All right, looking good. And I think for this part here above the knee, I'm going to switch to a small layer brush and get some new paint. Good amount of water. Nice. Try to get the shadow a bit more precise. Oh yeah, there I budged it, sorry. Okay, so just for demonstrating the general thought of the whole thing, we'll now have that dry for a short moment. And now, for the second coat, we use the small layer brush only, thin the paint down a bit more, a good deal more actually, so that, if you can see it here, I move that away from the autofocus to catch. So you have a real runny paint. It shouldn't be too opaque. And then we'll get a nice, precise tip. And now we are gonna approach the edges in a more precise way. And I like to do that by kind of feathering towards them. Like this, and then carry on to go across the original coat to get a nice consistent color. Also around here. Now at this point, you have to decide into how much detail you want to get. So do just like that and just not paint the parts where we already have a good highlighting color in place. Here we go. So you have to try out a few different ways of holding your model and your brush to reach all the parts the way that you intend to. So as you see, I'm usually resting the painting handle on the tabletop while doing this. So sorry for the big shaky hands right at the beginning. I was just trying to hold the model closer to the camera to capture it all better. But it works much better like this, for me at least. If you have the feeling that you applied too much paint at any point, just wipe it away with your fingertip. Actually, wiping with my fingertip is one of my favorite painting tools. So that looks all right. Now we'll just do a tiny, tiny little spot of paint on here. Okay. And move over to the ankle. First cover the original coat of paint, and now just approach the edge. The downside, it doesn't actually need that much of a highlight because there wouldn't be much light falling on there. Yeah, nice. Go over here, same thing. Approach that edge carefully. And go up to the shadow to the right. All right, I didn't really get that one very well, but it's actually been a while since I painted the last one like this. And it really is a lot about a kind of muscle memory, you know, getting into a flow and catching back to that when you paint the next part. But you get the knack of it really quickly. And my experience was that when you get to the last part of your first model, these last armor parts will already look much better than the first ones. And that will increase with the next model and so on. So here we have something that requires a bit special attention, where we have these slot parts. So here we need to be a bit more careful. And then it's up to you if you want to leave it like that or even apply some paint here. But I think it sticks out much better this way. And you see that you can work very precisely here. Oh, sorry, you actually don't see it like that, but now it may be a bit more visible. Yeah, this is beginning to turn out nicely. You see, and that really is all there's to it. Yeah, we're gonna do this up here a little better. Bit much there. Wipe it off. Now, once you get a little more routine into that, you can also try to paint the inner part of this broad edge here, and leave just the edge. Sorry, not sure how to phrase it in English. But for now, we'll just leave it like that. Looks nice enough. So we get this thing here a bit more precise, and go in there to finish that part. Yeah, that was thinned down a bit too much. I put some more paint in there. To do that last part down here. Same thing. Carefully approximate the shape of the model, and while doing so, just skip the edges and the shades. That's why it's called skip lighting. Okay, can do a little refinement here. Okay, looking good. And also these parts up front need their finishing touches. See this? Paint up to the shading, but not over it. This shade on this crease towards the sole of the boot here could have been a bit stronger, but once we get that part down around here, done right, it will look good anyway. So let's also do that. And for this, we can just kind of rest the brush on the base. And drag it around the model. So the upper edge of the soles will just remain unpainted. Very nice. Okay, so I like how this is turning out. Now this part will get its second coat. And this time we'll try to get really neat around the edges. Also here, that corner could get a little more paint so it's carved out more precisely. And up here, the highlight could be a little smoother. Okay, great. Oh, there on the kneecap. All right, so now when you look around this part, it's done. Really nice highlights without having anything more to do but just skipping them while painting. Same for the shadows. Cool look. Oh, there's a part I missed a bit. Just get it right into that corner. Yeah, that will look good once it's dry. And that's all there is to skip lighting. Now we're going to keep on doing this all over the model, and I'll keep rambling at some point or the other where I think some things might be worth hinting at. By the way, wiping with your fingertip can actually make the highlighting even more nice, because it will sometimes provide you with a more smooth transition than you can achieve with your two paint coats. Keep in mind that when you do that second coat of paint for the details, the paint should be thinned down substantially more than in the rough coat, not only to enable you to paint in a more precise way, but also sorry, I should concentrate, but also because it will help you to give more of a transition towards the edge. If you look at this area here, I hope you can see this right in the slide. Try highlighting something like that with layer paint afterwards, and good luck. Maybe you can pull this off, then you don't need this video at all, but I can't. And so I'm really happy about this new way of doing such nice, precise highlighting. There, really neat. Actually, this part here did not turn out very nice, I admit that, but then the model is not done very precisely around there. Okay, a little better. So now we're going to try to do something really cool on the shoulder pads, which is, if you look at this border here with its outer edge and its inner edge facing toward the pad where the red and yellow colors will go. And skip lighting allows us to have a highlight on that inner edge as well as the outer edge. Now, I know there are people who can do that with conventional painting techniques, and if you are one of them, I cannot tell you anything about painting. But for the rest of us, doing this with paint on this narrow edge was so far next to impossible. I tried it often enough, always failed miserably. But now it's much easier. Still, you have to watch out for what you're doing, so I hope I don't mess this up. But in this case, ignore the outer edge. Just paint over that and just be careful to leave the highlight on the inner edge. See? Do that all the way around. So, like that, looking good. Now, just completely paint the bottom side. There. Now we're gonna do the second coat. Need some new color. The second coat would normally be the one for more detailed work, but here we already have pretty much exactly the shape that our color is supposed to have in the end. Still, we're gonna do a second coat to make the rust gray look nicer. And what we're going to do next is that we just put an old school edge of Fenrisian gray on that outer edge of the shoulder pad, because that is pretty much the easiest part of a Space Marine to highlight in a conventional way, while the inner one is incredibly hard. So we'll just take some Fenrisian, smooth it with a bit of water. Get a bit of color off the brush. And then just with the side of your brush, stroke along that edge. Wonderful. That's also great. I'm not sure if you can get this, but like here on the back of the right hand, what's very cool is that this way you can have your edges look a bit more worn off. And like from actual combat usage than if you would just be painting on a line of lighter color. Now, with things like fingers, you just have to decide how far you are willing to take this. And the limit is basically just the quality of the model and the amount of time that you want to put into it. And when you're experimenting with this, it might get a bit insane now and then. At what you attempt to do next. But still, as you see, we can actually do highlights on the knuckles in a really easy fashion. Now, the helmet of a primary space marine is a part where skip lighting shines, especially because of the way that the face mask is shaped. That is perfect for us. As you can see, the contrast paint does a real nice edge underneath the eyes. That's perfect. And also here in the front, in the mouth, nose and mouth area. And so this makes our life really easy. As mentioned, the highlight underneath the eye is perfect. So just do not go there. You see? Do a great paint job by not painting. How cool is that? All right. Now carefully retrace that with the second coat. And here on the mask, I accidentally hit it with a little bit of rust gray there already when I was doing this thing here before the throat. But it'll work fine anyway. So point from the edge where the hoses go in for the ventilation, paint up to that. Leave the middle part untouched. Sorry. And now just do a little bit of these parts between the slots. See what I mean? Not all the way to the middle. Leave that free and stop at about half the width of the slots, and that will appear to be a really nice gradient when it's finished. Though it's actually not, but the illusion works. Now for the other half. As you can imagine by now, I guess the backpack is another area of great possibilities for skip lighting. So let's see how this one will turn out. All right, so that's it. Of course, we could put even more work into the details here, but I think for just the demonstration purposes, this will do fine. And this is the finished model with everything else applied. Now I've skipped those other parts in this video because it's about the gray parts of the armor, and the rest didn't have any skip lighting involved. But if you like to drop a comment, and I can do short separate explanations about doing brass ornaments or Space Marine eyes. As for the skip lighting, I think it turned out really well, being just the fourth model I'm doing with this. In parts like here, I exaggerated the effect a bit to really catch the idea on camera. Normally, I would do this a little more subtle, but still, overall, the look is really good. The backpack turned out wonderful, as did the parts on the arms, the very cool highlighting on the inner edge of the shoulder pad frame, and also the face around here. And so I think the result speaks for itself. Still, as being said, this is all brand new. I'm just getting into this myself, and I really hope that people will adopt this, get into it, do their own developments, because, again, compare it to the look of traditional Fenrisian gray highlighting. I think it's pretty convincing to do it like this. Of course, this looks a little less bluish than highlighting with Fenrisian, because that is a rather blue light color. So things to try out would be to mix the Space Wolf Gray base coat with a more bluish contrast paint, like Pterodon Turquoise, for example. And also, it might be worth trying to use a priming coat of Wraithbone instead of Grey Seer. I think these are the things that I'm gonna try next. And if you do anything with this, please let me know about it. I'm really eager to see what people will come up with. So, this is Warhammer painting, and you have a good one.